I'd like to call the September 29th special meeting of the City of Post Falls Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Will you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, it was announced earlier, but just to make sure, if you intend to speak regarding tonight's public hearing, make sure that you fill out the paperwork in the back and you can turn it into Amber up front. We will start with roll call.
Carey?
Here.
Kimball?
Here.
Davis?
Yes.
Schlauer?
Yes.
Hampe?
Here.
All right, Mr. Manley, any ceremonies, announcements, appointments, presentations, or anything?
None.
All right. Amendments to the agenda this evening.
There is not.
All right, Commissioners, declaration of conflict, ex parte contact, site visits, anything to disclose?
Nope.
None tonight?
Nope.
Okay, seeing none, then I will move to the consent calendar.
Yeah, you got action item A, minutes from the September 14th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
And there you have it.
All right, I'd move to approve as presented.
I second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further conversation, questions? Seeing none, call for a vote.
Hampe?
Abstain.
Schlauer?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Kimball?
Yes.
Carey?
Yes.
All right, citizen issues. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the commission on an issue that is not on the agenda. Comments on issues that are planned for future meetings and future agendas should be held for that meeting. Anyone here with citizen issues? Okay, seeing none. Unfinished or old business?
None.
All right, then that would bring us to the main portion of the evening. Public hearing, again, just to make sure and reiterate, if you do wish to speak, fill out the paperwork in the back and turn it into Amber up front. We will go ahead and open up the Build Right Home Zone Change. Mr. Porter, it is all yours.
Thank you, and good evening, Commissioners. Ethan Porter, one of the planners here with the city, to present the Build Right Home Zone change on the staff side. We're looking at the applicant for this proposal to be Olson Engineering on behalf of the owner, Pleasant View Investment LLC. They are requesting to rezone approximately 2.25 acres from the industrial zoning district to the medium-density multifamily residential zoning district. Here you can see the site hatched in red. It is north of Jacqueline Road, south of Creative Way, and west of Expo Parkway, abutting all three of those roads. You also have, it's located to the west end of the Woodbridge South subdivision as well. Looking at the site, the water and sewer providers are here as East Green Acres for the water, and the sewer would be the City of Post Falls. You can see from the image as well the current land use is vacant, and there were no topographical or natural geographic hazards on the site that have been identified. Going into some of the zone change review criteria, we look at the first and second one as being amendments to the zoning map. That should be in accordance with the comprehensive plan's future land use map. And then also amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found in the Post Falls comprehensive plan. Both these points I'll cover in the upcoming slides, as well as going into the other review criteria as well. So looking at this slide, you can see that the future land use designation for the site hatched in black there, that's the project location. It is pink, which means business commercial. You have the red to the east, which is commercial, and then to the west, which is yellow, would be low density residential. So north, you also have business commercial, and then south or west of the commercial, you have a little bit down there on Expo Parkway as business commercial also. Business commercial, looking at this land use designation, we see that this category promotes a mixture of moderate high density housing types within walking distance of the city center, neighborhood center, and corridor commercial uses, as well as civic uses and other amenities within Post Falls. And under this future land use designation, the R2 proposal tonight for this project is an implementing zoning district for this future land use designation. We also look at the focus area for this location, which is the Riverbend focus area. For forgive me for the text, it's small, but the highlighted sections basically allow a potential additional residential uses, and then that larger highlighted area is just talking about buffer requirements being maintained and included within low and high density developments and patterns. And so depending on the type of development this site receives, buffers would be in place depending on the type, or would not, depending, because R2 does have the twin home, single family uses as well, so some will, some won't, depending on how the site gets developed. But regardless, they will be in place if it requires it per code. Looking at the current zoning, we see that it's gray, and the hatched black is, again, that's industrial zoning for the gray, which is also to the north. You have the yellow to the west, which is R1 single family, Woodbridge South, and then south of the project location, we also have Woodbridge South, also single family R1 residential. To the east across Expo Parkway is red, which is commercial, community commercial services. So that kind of gives you an overview of what the current zoning is. You see on the north side, there is an R2 there, previously approved creative home zone change for twin homes as well up there. You can slightly see it right there. So, looking a little bit more at the industrial zoning currently, just to kind of get a perspective of, you know, your next to residential to the west, single-family Woodbridge South subdivision. Some permitted outright uses for industrial manufacturing uses on industrial would be tobacco, rubber, metal, electrical manufacturing, as well as miscellaneous manufacturing, and construction uses as well. And so kind of looking more so at the review criteria number 3, zoning, basically following considerations of street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses and community plans, and geographic or natural features. Some of those I addressed, but I'll go into the streets and traffic on the upcoming slide. But this would be an infill development, which is promoted for the comprehensive plan. It does allow kind of a compatibility for this proposal being residential next to residential instead of industrial next to residential, which planning principles usually steer clear of, but we are in the situation as we are with currently zoned as industrial next to residential, so they would make it more compatible being next to residential. Excuse me. And then looking at the commercial, review criteria 4, the commercial and high density residential zoning, which is not their proposal tonight, so that is not an applicable review criteria for tonight. But going into the streets, traffic patterns, it's mentioned in staff report that there's no concerns, but you can see that the classifications on Jacqueline Road would be a minor collector, and then south of Jacqueline on Expo Parkway would be a major collector, and then north of Jacqueline Road on Expo Parkway, the green there would be a minor arterial. And so those road classifications have been identified in the staff report. Staff does not have any concern with an R2 zoning and the road classifications surrounding it. Creative Way is a local commercial road as well, in case you had that question. It's not really labeled in here, but it's gray, but it's faintly you can see it. But Creative Way would also support this, as, like I said, staff has made no indication that would affect the traffic pattern or streets in this proposal for R2 zoning. Looking at criteria 5 for the review criteria, we're looking at limited or neighborhood commercial, which is not applicable, but the lower density residential zoning is applicable, as that's what they're proposing tonight. It's a lower / it can be somewhat of a medium density, as it's labeled in R2 medium density residential. So those are typically assigned for properties as they proceed farther away from the higher intensity activity, urban activity. And so further east you go on Expo Parkway, you get into more of the development. Currently across Expo Parkway, as you kind of seen from the project location map, there isn't much developed out there right now across Expo Parkway, as it's vacant right now. So they aren't necessarily in a commercial activity area, but further east you go, they would be follow more in line with that. Number 6 is industrial zoning, which they are not proposing, so that is not applicable tonight for that review criteria. Looking more into the goals and policies within the comprehensive plan, these are labeled out in your staff report, but also I just want to highlight a couple goals and a couple policies that kind of align with this and are important. Goal 1 would be grow and sustain a balanced, resilient economy for Post Falls, providing community prosperity and fiscal health. We know that there's a housing crisis. We do, need homes for people moving here as it's crisis, like I mentioned, and also there's mentioned earlier infill development, which was supported by the comprehensive plan. It does help the economy for development and the fiscal health of the city. Goal 7, plan for and establish types and quantities of land uses in Post Falls, supporting community needs and the city's long-term sustainability. Kind of mentioned just previously, I mean, housing is a need as well as infill development. We are not expanding on the city limits, on the outer city limits, but we would be developing in the city, kind of helping out those vacant lots be developed and help fiscally for impact fees to help infrastructure be in place, as well as public safety and streets and multimodal pathways. Now, looking at policy 1, maintain or enhance community levels of service, foster long-term fiscal health of the community, maintain and enhance residents' quality of life, promote compatible and well-designed development, and implement goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. Some of these I touched on as well, but looking kind of at the impact fees, like I mentioned, those public safety, streets, parks, multimodal pathways, and transportation, that's all part of those impact fees that would help. Also, the well-designed development and compatible well-designed development, like I said, residential next to residential is more compatible than residential next to industrial. And we have, if they go for R2 twin homes, and then we have twin home design standards that they would have to follow, as well as site plan performance standards that they would have to follow as well. So they would have to meet code for any standards we have, that we have in place for any development of that sort. Policy 2 discusses to apply or revise zoning designations with careful consideration of those following factors, which we did talk about: the future land use mapping being business commercial, compatibility with surrounding land uses, which I've touched on, being residential, the infrastructure and service plans, impact fees help that out, as well as developing the site would help bring in infrastructure, as well as making sure that we have a need that's being met in the city of Post Falls, whether that be homes or twin homes or just residential in general. We have existing and future traffic patterns, which have been looked at in the staff report and addressed, and then these goals and policies are being discussed here from the comprehensive plan in this presentation and within the staff report. So looking at all that and review criteria, we routed to these agencies for comment, and then of these agencies that we routed to, we received back comments from the Post Falls Police Department. They remain neutral, and then Department of Environmental Quality, they responded and had no environmental impact related comment at this time. So with that, I will take any questions you commissioners have to ask city staff at this time.
Questions for staff?
What would be the maximum density that would be allowed in the R2 zoning on that parcel?
Currently, as our code states, it would be R2 other multifamily, and that's at 12 units per acre.
So about 27?
Correct. Currently, though, we have a pending ordinance that's going through the public hearing process to remove R2 other multifamily. So pending that ordinance being approved, we would not allow other multifamily with the R2 zoning. And if Field wants to expand further on that, he can.
So, City Council did pass an ordinance removing multifamily from the R2 zone. That came before you. It went up to City Council. Today was identified that the Coeur d'Alene Press may have had an issue with publishing that ordinance summary or publishing the notice for that hearing, and so we'll likely be re-noticing that hearing to be readopted by City Council, but it's already been adopted, so I don't anticipate any changes or anything like that moving forward.
To give you a better understanding, we have the official bulk and
Okay.
placement table that is current right now, and you see R2 single family, R2 duplex, and R2 other multifamily, R2 twin home. Currently, that is what's in place now, but pending that approval or fix of that ordinance, then we would be looking at this new official bulk and placement table as R2 single family, R2 duplex, and R2 townhome. And that would be essentially what would be in place that they would be able to build out from. So that other multifamily would not be there.
Okay. And that doesn't actually, does that show a I mean, how many per?
It doesn't give a density, but it's based on the lot, the minimum lot area that
Okay.
they can have, and then basically based on that, with their lot coverage, you can kind of determine what's there. So
Okay.
they won't be able to do, as far as density wise, 12 units per acre with this new official bulk placement table.
Okay, they wouldn't be able to. And then, just to be clear, if there is an issue with this and it has to go back with city council, just an issue with the, whatever, announcing it, would this be affected, would the old rules apply or the new rules apply, since it's in,
It would,
So
Been adopted.
this is a recommendation to city council, so
right,
we would,
okay.
we would anticipate that the ordinance correction will happen before city council makes a final decision
Okay.
on this.
Yes,
So
that answered my question, thank you.
So Field, just to clarify, so vesting happens with building permit, right?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Would you clarify would there be a buffer between the single family and this, and what would determine what that buffer would be?
So going
Okay.
with the new ordinance that was approved, we can see that this new buffer table would be in place in our landscaping code. Basically, this allows residential to multifamily, so if they did a one site plan with duplexes on it, then they would go under site plan review. They would be able, or they would be required to put in the residential to multifamily buffer, which is a 10-foot buffer. And so if they did them on individual lots and did like twin homes, they wouldn't have a buffer there. But if they went through an overall site plan for one site, multiple units that are duplexes, they can go through and have a buffer of 10 feet to the residential Woodbridge South subdivision.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
All right, now.
No? Okay. Thank you, sir. Invite the applicant up at this time.
You got it.
They keep staring at it even though it's blank.
Hoping it comes on.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jeremy Terzulli. On behalf of Build Right Homes, I work with Olson Engineering as a project coordinator. I reside in Hauser, Idaho. So as is typical, city staff pretty much made most of my points for me, so some of this may be repetitive, and I apologize for that. So this shows, at the top, we've got a picture of the current zoning designation, the hatch mark, as Ethan had pointed out. We have industrial zoning, and below that shows the future land use map, which it would appear when they did the comprehensive plan, they recognized perhaps some conflicting uses could go in here at the nub here at the southeast corner of the Woodbridge subdivision, and so the future land use map would lean towards more of a business commercial, neighborhood commercial type user. And then to the right, copied and pasted from the comprehensive plan, and Ethan pointed this stuff out as well, how the medium density residential, the R1 zoning, and the neighborhood commercial zoning can all integrate and work together. Some points that we believe this request will create sort of a natural buffer between any conflicting uses between Woodbridge and the additional commercial and industrial uses across Expo Parkway. It's currently adjacent to a city park or an open space there, property owned by the city. All the properties now on that island that sort of makes up the Woodbridge subdivision would be residential uses. And Ethan pointed this out as well, that a lot of the current allowable uses in the industrial zoning, we feel could negatively impact the residents of the Woodbridge subdivision, and I've listed a few that I feel would be very incompatible with the neighborhood context there. And then I'm going to move on to an item that was of importance in the comprehensive plan. They speak directly to the housing stock and recognizing a need for more units serving smaller, lower income households, workforce housing. Our proposal, Ethan touched on this. I'm not sure if he came right out and said it, but our proposal, and it is in the application, is for a twin home product. The applicant, or I mean the client came directly to Olson Engineering in response to our project there. Teton Meadows is what we call it at Creative and Celtice Way. It's a twin home product, very similar to what we're proposing here, to fill that niche that we think is very underserved right now in the Post Falls and in the greater Kootenai County area. So I did a search on the MLS yesterday, and you can see my bullet points there, what my search criteria were. List price not to exceed $400,000, a site-built home in city limits, and currently active listings on Flex MLS, that was 8. 8 options for somebody under $400,000. Those houses were all quite small, and several of them in need of repair and updating. So Ethan alluded to it. I do believe there is a housing crisis in our area right now. You don't have to be in the industry to know that there's a massive insurgence of people coming into the area, and housing being in short supply right now. As far as workforce housing is concerned, honestly, $400,000 as a price point is sort of pushing what a typical household making between $80,000 and $100,000 a year right now. Combined household income of $80,000 to $100,000 a year, $400,000 is about their cap of what they could afford. So I reached out to a friend of mine at Alliance Title to get some data, and this next slide, this is year to date. These are closed sales, single family, and the highlighted area is what I would think that household income making between $80,000 and $100,000 a year, that's their realtor is going to be looking within that price range. And if you just soak in this chart for a minute, you recognize that the number of sales happening are creeping further and further outside of that range of what we would consider attainable as workforce housing right now. The total sales to the right there, 399 for 350 to 400,000, 478 for 400 to 450, and 400,000 for 450 to $500,000. The sales happening under $350,000 are dwindling and rapidly. It's a trend that we see continuing. And currently, for the twin home product, there are only 2 zoning designations that allow it outright right now in the city of Post Falls. I've highlighted that. That's the R2 and R3 zoning. R1, it is allowed through special use permit, but outright allowed use for the twin home product only exists in the R2 and R3 zoning. So that's why the request from industrial to R2. This isn't an attempt to bait and switch. Our goal is to put a twin home product out there. We are restricted with the lot size, so the density really gets driven by the lot size and the amount of land that you have to work with. Once you put in the roads, the sidewalks, the connectivity, our goal is to create, so the twin home product, for anybody that's not familiar with it from the street appears to be like a duplex. Our property line is on that party wall of the duplex, and each side can be owned fee simple by an individual, allowing them entry into the housing market, build some equity, and hopefully become that move-up buyer in the future. Right now, as this slide outlines, there's very little in the middle. You have your R1 or you have your mid-rise and high-rise apartment complexes. There's very, very little community-wide. This is Post Falls, Hayden, Coeur d'Alene, Rathdrum that allows for a differing housing product. And so to that end, right now the housing crisis truly does boil down to a matter of supply and demand. The supply has stayed fairly consistent. We just have a massive influx in demand. And in talking with different people, there's a group out there right now, can't remember the name of it, North Idaho for Responsible Growth, something to that effect. They bring up some good points. A lot of people bring up some good points right now with regard to this influx of people coming to the area. And I think one of the strategies that people think that we can employ here is sort of the wait it out, offer some more restrictions, little fewer approvals on certain requests, and sort of wait out this wave. But I talk to real estate professionals all the time. I'm also a licensed realtor that deals more in development and commercial stuff. I talk to the title officers. I talk to the escrow officers. I've talked to a handful of people that have recently moved here. It's our position that this isn't so much a wave of people that are coming that we can wait out. It's more of a rising tide. The people moving here are moving from California, Oregon, Washington. They're moving from major metropolitan areas, and it's politically driven. They're sick of the politics in the areas and the states that they live in. They're moving here to sort of escape that. They're moving to Montana, Idaho, Texas, and Arizona. Those seem to be the places. And then if you move to the East Coast, the New Yorkers are all fleeing and going to Florida. That seems to be the trend. You then have a Wall Street Journal article that comes out that talks about how wonderful Coeur d'Alene is and how everybody should move here. And we've got that coupled with the COVID pandemic that allowed people in major metropolitan areas like Seattle, like Portland, like Sacramento, San Francisco, right on down the West Coast, recognizing, embracing technology like Zoom and conference call, and realizing I don't need to live in Silicon Valley to do my work. I don't need to live outside of San Francisco, or I don't need to live outside of Seattle. And it created this absolute perfect storm of people saying, I'm sick of the politics, I'm sick of the commuting, and I realized I don't actually need to live here to earn a living. And there it is, the perfect recipe to say, get out, where do we go? We go to Idaho, we go to Montana, we like the politics, we like the outdoor lifestyle, and I have an opinion on the matter, but it really has no place here. If I could push a button and it said, let's keep the growth where it was 5, 6, 7 years ago at a steady 3 to 4% that we could all manage, I'd push that button. It's not an option. My fear is if this commission, Post Falls, Hayden, Coeur d'Alene, Rathdrum, don't recognize the problem, if they don't recognize and legislate, regulate accordingly, we'll get too far down the road and recognize we had an opportunity here to create a more diverse, a broader range of housing products, because right now the people that are going to suffer are the people that can't gain entry into the housing market here. If you have a buyer coming from California with a 401k realizing $1 million worth of equity on the sale of their property in California, the local person that is working hard, they're not going to be able to compete with that cash offer. My rep over at Alliance Title also shared with me earlier in September that 35% of the transactions done in Kootenai County thus far in September were cash deals. That number's just insane to me. 35% of people closing a deal, median sale price at $540,000 are coming with cash. It's tough to compete with. And I can truly understand the let's wait it out. If we don't have product to sell these people, they'll go someplace else. But I think the trend that I'm seeing is that that's not the case, that this is going to continue for years to come, and we can be proactive as opposed to reactive with allowing diverse housing onto the market, helping out the people here. My greatest fear is my kids that are teenagers right now, that I'm going to send them off to college. They're going to get a college degree, want to come back to our community, and we won't be able to find them a house. I really think that is a very legitimate concern right now that we should probably be thinking about. I don't think the wait it out and these people will find someplace else to go is going to happen, and all the data and all the people I talk to indicate exactly the opposite. This trend is going to continue. And I don't like it any more than anybody else, but it's very real. And if you look at that slide up there right now, less than 5% of the land area in Post Falls allows for this type of product to find its way to the market without zone changes, without PUDs, without additional land use actions. I think it's sort of out of balance, and I believe this commission will be instrumental in helping guide our community. This commission doesn't have political agendas, doesn't need votes to sit up here. I honestly believe that. That's not lip service. I think you guys are going to help guide the way this goes. I think it's really important. I think that the proposal put forward, again, it's for twin homes. The density will be driven by the lot sizes. We believe it's very compatible with the residents at Woodbridge. These are going to be properties that will be able to be owned by individuals, not rentals. It's perfectly served by existing infrastructure. It's perfectly served by major transportation corridors. It's perfectly aligned with the freeway, additional services to allow those workforce people to get to and from work, to go shop for their groceries. We believe it's an ideal placement, and we respectfully request that you offer a recommendation to City Council to approve this request. I'm here for any questions.
Questions for applicant?
I don't have any.
Nope. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Public comment, those in favor,
None.
those in neutral,
None.
those opposed.
None.
Okay. No need for return comment or rebuttal. Commissioners, questions?
I have a quick question. As a twin home designation, is it still just the 12 per acre, or would it go up?
So looking at the currently what it is now, you have your 12 units per acre, but the twin home for that for this situation would be 18 units
It
per
could
acre.
be 18 units per
And
acre.
then what's proposed and pending is the basically that and forgive me, John, TH, is that townhome or twin home?
Twin home is a form of a townhome, so we got rid of the TWH and just called it a twin home. The what kind of the factor that kind of deals with is the minimum lot width. 25 feet is the minimum lot width on the R2 townhome. Seldom do you have like a 6-unit townhome project where each unit is 25 feet wide. So in essence, the table itself steers itself to a twin home product, which is a 2-unit townhome product. I will say on the previous one, the 18 that was on that was assuming you don't need any streets or right-of-way dedications. That's a net value. So
Okay.
the ability to yield at 18 would be about impossible because you're looking at net. And that's another reason why we went to just more of a dimensional constraint lot width and going by the area per dwelling unit, because you just seem to be more consistent than the inconsistencies the existing table had.
Okay. Could you emphasize again what the possible uses are if it's left in the zoning it is? The industrial zoning it is?
Yeah, left in the industrial zoning, I mean, you have a lot of manufacturing in there. Our land use table is pretty extensive, so I only put a few in, and then Jeremy also put in a few in from our land use table. But a lot of it, outright permitted uses would be, a lot of manufacturing. That was the, tobacco, and there's a plethora in there, and our land use table, like I said, is pretty big, so without actually seeing it and going through it one by one. But a lot of it, like I said, manufacturing, you have a lot of other uses that planning principles would say wouldn't be compatible with residential. Industrial zoning next to residential offers the biggest buffer if they were to develop at an industrial use. And so that would be, if I'm not mistaken, 25 feet for the buffer on that current. And so that would be in place if you did do an industrial development. So an R2 like they're proposing would not have with twin homes on their own lots, would not have a buffer at that point.
Okay.
Does that kind of help you?
Yeah,
I mean, without
I
seeing the
just-
land use table, it's kind of hard for me to
Yeah.
say which ones are and aren't.
But it's pretty intense industrial uses.
Yeah, the uses are much more intense as far as possible pollution, noise,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So, yeah, you can consider that as not compatible with residential single-family homes next door.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Ethan, really quick.
Yeah.
Just so I want to double check. There's no hour of operations limitations in industrial, so an industrial user like a manufacturing can go 24-hour shifts.
Correct. We don't regulate their hours of work. We just go by the noise ordinance based on that. But like UPS, a trucking site to the west, there would be they operate all times during the day, and so they're not necessarily next to residential out there, but
Right.
you
But-
do have these uses that do have operations.
Deliveries and things like that at night that back up beepers and all
Yep.
that stuff. Okay.
Correct.
So can you explain a little better, because we have two maps. We have a zoning map where it's obviously industrial, but we have a future land use designation, which shows that as community commercial services, which obviously is a pretty good fit out there. So what is the difference between the future land use designation and the actual zoning designation?
As far as, I would say, actually, let me look that up real quick.
The big difference is the zoning map is the vested implementation code that it gives you allowances to go construct something. That's your vested rights. The future land use map points the development in a direction, and it gives you a bandwidth of potential developments with the theme of that area that could be asked for zoning. So when you're looking at the business commercial as a future land use map, it has in it a series of implementing zones. I don't know if it's in the staff report, it shows it, but I don't believe industrial is actually in that.
That's what I'm trying to look up. If Phil might be able to find it a lot easier if on the computer, but I don't believe it was labeled in our staff report. The implementing zones under business, and I should have put it in my slides, so forgive me for that. And I just knew that it was R2, what they're proposing allowed it. But as far as business, commercial, and industrial use, it kind of, you look at it use-wise as far as kind of what use, it still can be industrial, but the use can still be applied for, I guess.
So, and I guess I'm just kind of trying to get in my brain, because looking at one, you think, okay, well, this business commercial totally makes sense. It actually really makes sense where that's at, kind of on that corner, kind of having, some little amenities for the development. But so if they were to want to stay in the business commercial, they'd still have to come here for a zone change, is that correct?
So the business commercial is not a zoning district.
Okay,
It is a land use designation that allows multiple zones. So, and in that land use designation, it allows R2, R3, a CCS, it allows for community commercial mixed. And the reason why that is sometimes you need rooftops to support commercial, and there's an interconnectivity between density and commercialism. So that's why it's a business commercial, so that way it allows that activity to exist. So the business commercial isn't a zone. It's just, it allows an array of zoning to be asked for.
Okay, an array of zoning to be asked for, so as a change. Because if this parcel were going to be anything but strictly industrial, they would have to come and ask for a zone change, is that correct?
They're currently industrial now.
Right, if they were going to have any other use outside of industrial, they would have to come here and ask for a zone change, is that correct?
Potentially. There's also some commercial that's allowed in the industrial through a special use permit, but there would be another ask before P&Z.
Okay,
So if it helps as well, the future land use map and the comprehensive plan are the sort of guidance documents, whereas the zoning map is what is in place right now. That helps as well. And then I did look up the business commercial designation in the comprehensive plan, and industrial is not an implementing zoning district.
okay.
So in that regards, it'd be more conforming to change that into another zoning that would be implemented in that business commercial designation.
R2 is an implementing zoning district, so
Okay,
as Ethan said, it's more conforming to the comprehensive plan.
okay.
I've got a question, more historically. Was Woodbridge part of Expo? When this was originally,
Yes, it was
Expo was created, was Woodbridge broken off and converted to residential?
correct.
So, it's kind of weird they didn't break that off all along, because it looks kind of out of place, like, why wasn't it residential when Woodbridge broke off and became residential, I wonder?
I think some of that could be just allows flexibility in the future. I think if someone came here and wanted CCS and they had a seed store they wanted to put there, that may make sense too. So it allows, and that's why you have a future land use map to kind of allow that flexibility. The minute we say for sure something's going to be anything,
Yeah.
that's the first time it's going to be something else.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of how they work together.
Also, I think if that had been zoned R1 and someone was here asking for a zone change to industrial, the seats would be full.
Agree.
Other questions?
No.
We got the whole crew here. Mr. Melvin, no one? Okay, all right. Okay, if there's no other questions, then I will go ahead and close out the hearing. Open it up for conversation. Anybody want to start?
I will.
Okay.
I think it's a better fit there. Personally, if I was a residential owner right along there, I would much rather see a townhome development or something going in there rather than take a chance on one of the offshoot industrial things that could be done in that zoning classification. So I think it would be a good fit to have it changed.
Ray?
I think Ross hit the nail on the head when it comes to if this were the opposite and if it was R2 and they were asking for industrial, it wouldn't meet any other criteria in the comprehensive plan. And so in a lot of ways, this is kind of a housekeeping thing where we have this vision of our city, and that's what the comprehensive plan is. And so by looking at this zone change, it implements our comprehensive plan and the vision that we have going forward, not looking backwards. And I think that's a really important thing. Beyond that, I think the staff report is pretty straightforward when it comes to what we've got for our criteria for approval. The road classifications are there, the water and sewers there, the geographic features don't prohibit anything like this. The comprehensive plan supports it, and I just think it's more of just a housekeeping thing, And I appreciate Mr. Trezulli's comments with regards to housing. I think that we really have to look at those kids that are graduating from Post Falls High School and Lake City High School and Lakeland High School and Coeur d'Alene High School, and what their housing options moving forward. Because at $40,000 a year, a $2,500 a month mortgage doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And even though you can put you can put roommates on an apartment application, but you can't put roommates on a mortgage application. So I think it's really important that if we want to help the youth of our community stay here and end up building generational wealth, I think it's important that we have some options.
Ross?
Yeah, I agree. I think we're killing two birds with one stone here. One, it's a lot better fit for the adjacent 7 lots there and the people second tier. To have more residential there than have an industrial user operating 24 hours a day, making an incredible amount of noise. It's weird that it wasn't residential to begin with, so I think that's a win. And again, this I agree with everything said also, and I think that this is a product that Post Falls people are going to live in. This is going to be a product for our people, not necessarily so much as people moving in, but this is for our people that really deserve an opportunity to try to own a home, and so I'm definitely in favor.
Okay. Nancy?
Well, I have to agree that industrial is not a good fit for that. I would love to see like a few little businesses in there, but since it's industrial now and that's what we're looking at, I think certainly R2 is a much better fit than industrial.
Yeah, I think, there's people that don't want the prairie built out. There's people that don't want this, don't want that. I look at an infill project like this. I look at that particular node and I say from a safety standpoint, townhomes would be a heck of a lot safer than having it an empty field and people getting into trouble, or a convenience store, or any of those other things that potentially could be. So it absolutely makes a fit. I think a lot of times we get accused of we're just trying to provide homes for people that are coming in from other states. But I think this, and Ross, you mentioned it, Ray, you did too, is this is a really good opportunity for us to be able to build homes for kids that are be graduating, getting new jobs. I mean, it's a really, really good opportunity. So I think it perfectly fits. And at this point, I would entertain a motion if somebody has one.
I will move to recommend approval of the Build Right Homes zone change, file number RZNE 0008-2021, finding it is in compliance with Post Falls Municipal Code as shown within the analysis found in the staff report. I further move that such recommendation be updated by staff to include findings of fact, conclusions of law reflective of the staff report, a summation of testimony provided by citizens appearing and testifying, which there weren't any, and presented to the commission within 60 days following tonight's public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Carrie,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Schlauer,
Yes.
Hampi.
Yes.
All right. Administrative and staff reports.
None.
Okay. Commission comments? Anything to add, to share?
No.
Tidbits of wisdom? Okay. If there is nothing else, then I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I so move.